Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So let's make dua inshallah and we'll start. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Allahumma rabbana yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa bika nasta'in ya fattah. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين فسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري Wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Inshallah, we continue tonight mentioning on that part of Mirath where we had spoken about the last portion of a will. When we were describing the will, we were describing where 1/3 could be used in giving from one's free desire, and we mentioned that that particular desire should really be to cover what? All our missed ibadat, worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those things that we were faltering. Take that 1/3 well that Allah has ordained for us and spend in the path of Allah, whether it's in some sadaqah, either in the masjid, towards a child learning deen, to some other institution for the poor, the needy, whatever it is, but put some of our 1/3 of our wealth in that direction, so to cover for what? That aspect of it. Also make fidya of what? Our salah, zakah, or hajj, all the shortcomings that we may have in all respect of these things. From that 1/3 proportion of wealth, do that with it. And we started last week talking about the initial part of wealth, that is the 2/3 remaining portion of wealth after one has actually what? Funeral rights covered. We already covered the funeral rights, and then we cover what? All debts, finished 1/3 of the will, and we now talking about 2/3 that Allah tells us that we don't have any control over, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dictates to us how that should be spent. Alright? So, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in Surah Ali Imran. He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. And he tells us, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُمْ. That person concerning as well, let not those people who covetously, يَحْسَبَنَّ, who thinks of their wealth and feel to themselves that their wealth, by holding it back, يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَهُمُ اللَّهُ, from what Allah has given them, they keep holding back the wealth, growing older with their wealth, attached to their wealth, and they just feel that this wealth is necessary for them to have when they reach old age. And nothing is wrong with keeping money for it. You see, when you get sick of a rainy day, no problem with that. We're not talking about that, because we ain't saying to squander and spend out all the money either. We're not talking about that. What we are saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, ayabkhaluna, holding it back without doing what you're supposed to do with it. And that is ensuring that it is khayrun lahum, that it is better for you. In other words, if we understand what is good for you from our wealth, then one should take that and put it in perspective. And then he says, but rather than hold it back, he says, sharrul lahum, but your wealth could be what for you? Bad for you. Sayutawwaquna wa ma bakhilu bihi yawm al-qiyamah. He says, but your wealth can be a source of your destruction by just holding it back, and be a source of something that holds around your neck as a flame. And many mufassir and commentators mention that this is as though it is that which clings on to you as a punishment around your neck, your wealth. On the day of Qiyamah, وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And Allah tells us that the wealth that every one of us have, مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, it belongs to who? Allah. At the end of the day, we die. What do we take with us? In qata'a illa thalath. Everything cuts off from us except in 3 things. Deeds, good or bad, our knowledge that we disseminate and is good to people and good behavior and character we taught people, or the wealth we spent in the path of Allah. Those are the things, or children that are waladun salih, that is good for us. These are the things that are going to benefit us. Illa thalas, but everything else, all of the wealth, goes back and is distributed to whomsoever will be taking of that wealth. it doesn't belong to us anymore. We no longer have use for it. So Allah is saying, Mirathu samawati wal ard lillahi. Everything belongs to Allah. It goes back to Allah. The choice we have is whether one decides to choose that path of what Allah has ordained in the Quran as to how his wealth should be distributed, or he thinks to himself, I want my wealth to be given as I so please, and makes his own personal choices. And in making your personal choices, we must know that there is what? Yabkhaluna. He holds it back and feels he could spend it or give it and leave it to whomsoever he wills. When Allah says and ordain who should really receive it. And that's our discussion. Who should receive? And that portion of it, 2/3 portion, Allah says, that is my wealth that I will distribute to whom Allah wills it to go to. So we earn it, we have it, house, land, car, money in the bank, assets all over the place, businesses, we own it. But when death comes, Allah says, no, it's no longer yours. I am the owner now. And I say how it should be distributed. But many cases, we know, is not so. We have different ways that we choose to deal with it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us here the way of it. And last class we mentioned about a certain part of it, that what connects a person to their wealth and mirath and inheritance. What makes you feel you have the right to inherit wealth from someone? And there are a few number of obligations that must be fulfilled, or rights that must be there in order for you to understand whether you are eligible to receive wealth or inherit wealth from anyone. And the first is a marital tie. 1. Husband and wife relationship, children, ties. Families spreading together in a close-knit environment. That unit, they are entitled to receive from one another, up or down. In other words, you have a son, the son died, the son had wealth. Could the father receive from the son? Yes. If the father died and the son has wealth, and the father has wealth, could the son receive? Yes. Descendant. So ascendant and descendant, those above and those below, in that same family tie, they can receive wealth. It's just the matter of how and in what manner. We will discuss that. But marital tie, blood relationship, meaning brothers, sisters. Go down further, you could talk about even cousins, right? Uncles, aunts. But it has dependence on the situation and the condition. But we are saying that they all may be entitled to receive, and some may be excluded dependent on who is present. And that is our next consideration, a blood relationship. They just can't just say I'm a blood relationship, but there must also be a consideration as to why and how close you are to the person or the deceased. And that will determine whether you can receive money or not, or wealth as the case would be. The next, after blood relationship, according to the Sunni Islamic law, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it relates to the paternal connection only in relationship to inheritance. That is one point of view. B, an illegitimate child is not considered to be a lawful inheritor of wealth. That's our next consideration that one must also be in mind. Association of friendship bond. Voila, this is a further divided into two by the Hanafi jurists. As one who is by meaning the master of a manumitted slave, or 2, one meaning an inheritor, successor by contract. These are people who are far distant. If you have no relative whatsoever, you could reach this distance in getting somebody to inherit from you. Alright? Now, an heir may have more than one cause of inheritance. Example, a husband who inherits fixed shares and may also be a residuary. Now, who's a residuary? There are two things with wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this 2/3 portion of wealth. There are persons who are the ashabul faraid. People who are, Allah says they must get a share. Your father, your mother, your sons, your daughters, wife or husband, as the case would be, vice versa, they must get. There are no two ways about it. Allah said that the faraid, they have a fixed share, they must get. In the absence of somebody else, probably a brother or a grandfather or a grandmother, in the absence of them, but the compulsory aspect of those people first. They must get, they are a fixed share. Now, besides those, There he's telling us the residuary now. When you give everybody a fixed share, there's a group of people within that relationship whom Allah say the rest will go for them. And the main residuary of a family, usually in a relationship, general relationship, because each case is different. In a normal average case, you have a father, a mother, husband, wife, let's say. Then you have what? You have sons and daughters in a relationship. That's a normal family life, okay? And the father dies. The father dies. Then he leaves what? A wife, 2 sons and a daughter. That's a case. That's a simple case. So he dies. He leaves his wife, 2 sons and a daughter. In this case, the wife has a fixed share according to the Quran, which she must get. All right? He may have a mother and a father who may also be entitled to what? A share, if they are alive. And if they're not alive, then they don't get any. And neither anybody above that again. Now it remains to who? In the fixed share circle, only the sons and the daughters. They now become the residuary, the ones who are entitled to the rest of the wealth. Stops there. Nobody else gets. So the wife and his children became the rest of it if they have no what? If he has no parents alive, that has been a mother or father. Otherwise, they also are fixed share again. You understand the relationship? Brothers get cut off, sisters get cut off, cousins, uncles, aunts, everybody else get cut off. Right away. But we'll come to other examples. Just giving you an idea who is a residuary and who is one entitled to receive a fixed share. Alright? Now, according to the Quran, the Sunnah, the Hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Ijma, general consensus based on cases of Islamic jurists, there are categories of persons that receive the wealth of the deceased. And these categories we're going to look at now. Who are entitled to receive and who must receive. So the basic principles of inheritance are 12. The basic principles are 12. 12 principles involved in the laws of inheritance and how it should be distributed. 7 of them are in the Quran, and 5 are described in the Sunnah, the Hadith, and 3 are based on general consensus and decisions based on discussions and so on and deductions from the ulama and the scholars, based on Quran and Hadith as well. Alright? So let's look at it. So 3 groups mentioned below are termed as the Dhawil Furud, or the people who must receive, whose shares are already predetermined and mentioned above. And they are this group of 7 whose shares are defined by the Quran. They are, as the Quran says, here, the children, male, female of the deceased. That's one group. Children, male, female of deceased. That is one group the Quran described. They must receive a share. Parent of the deceased, when the deceased have children. Parents of deceased, when the deceased do not have children. What is their position? If the son dies and never had children but he have wealth, Quran said something had happened there, right? Quran tells us how to deal with them. We'll come to it just now, but we just understand who they are. Husband, wife dies, he has to get something from his wife leaves wealth. Wife there now, wives or wife, it doesn't matter. If you have a number of wives, they are all entitled to receive. Alright? Then you have uterine brothers and mothers. That's blood relationship. Alright? From the mother side. Her brothers and sisters. They may receive and they may be totally cut off dependent on who is in front of them. And full brothers. Full brothers of that person if he died. Alright? Now, this is what the Quran mentions to us in the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He tells us from Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he says, al-huququl fara'id, the law of compulsory distribution of wealth, the proportion that one must receive, bi ahliha, must be given to his family. Whoever is rightfully deserving of that right must be given. Fama baqiya, and whatever it remains after the rightful 1/3, 2/3, or whatever portion it is comes off, then it says fama baqiya, and whatever remains after that, he says fahuwa li awla rajulin dhakarin. Then it goes down now to the nearest person who will receive the final proportion of wealth as the ashaba, the last individual who gets the rest of the money or the rest of the wealth. And the Quran determines that as being the children, the son or the daughters, or someone in the absence of them. Alright? And we'll learn about who will be in the absence and so on in circumstances and cases we will discuss further on. Alright? According to the Sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the wala, the friendship by bond, is also a reason, and Hadith proves it as well. Sisters become asaba, the sisters of the deceased. Residuary inheritors as well, meaning that they could receive the rest of it depending on who is there. They get what is left over after the other heirs take their primary shares, or what portion they have to receive. Alright? That is according to the law of the Hadith of Rasulullah, if that happens in a case. Circumstantial. Our next situation may arrive, relatives based on Hadith. For example, you give fixed sharers or primary heirs, those who are there to receive, must be given to the ones who are entitled, and what they leave will go to the nearest male or relative, whatever their fixed share remains after that. So grandmother gets 1/6 based on give the grandmother a 6. That's what the Hadith the Rasulullah mentions. The sister, based on the Hadith, give the daughter a half and the granddaughter 1/6, and what is left will go to the sister. This is just the Hadith based on what is mentioned. A case needs to be developed with. Alright? Now, 3. Under Ijma consensus. When Hadith and Quran and Hadith, when you do not find these solutions in there, there is Ijma that is based on Quran and Hadith as well, where you have to find cases that are extraordinary. For example, consensus on treating grandsons and granddaughter as daughter provided latter is non-existent. If you do not have what? If you had granddaughters or great-granddaughters or greater-grandchildren, what are you going to do? And you have no one of the other people existing. And a certain person lived for like a good few number of years and he has the wealth. And even his children pass away, and his children pass away, and then you have the great-grandchildren living now. What happens? Alright? So therefore, consensus must be given as to how to deal with that. What about the grandfather? He is also treated as a father when the father does not exist. Is non-existent. Alright? A sister on the father's side is taken as a sister of both sides, father and mother, if there is no one existing after again. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, give the sharers of inheritors as remains after that is for the ashab, the one who is nearest male heir, the one who receives the rest. Hadith found in Bukhari. So the shares of inheritance should be given first to the Darul Furu, those who are entitled according to Quran and Hadith. And then the Quran and Hadith have what? Determine their shares. When there are specified shares, when the specified shares are given, the asaba, the ones who receive in the last, should be given their shares. Preference is for the nearest relative of the deceased. A potential heir can be excluded from inheritance in the following 2 ways. Now, there are 2 categories of people who never get excluded and people who are excluded as a dependent on who is living and who is not there. Alright? So for example, never excluded will be partially excluded or totally excluded. Alright? Dependent on the case. And there's what? Converted into residuary means those who will receive the rest of the wealth. Alright? Now, who are the residuary who will never be excluded? Out of these 12 primary heirs, 5 of them always get their shares and 7 of them sometimes are left out. So you have 12 major line of people who will receive money, and out of that 12, sometimes out of that 12, how many of them get left out? We say 7 of them sometimes are what? Left out of that group. So we know the 12, let's look at the 12 and then we look at who will be left out. So the 5 firstly now, who will always be included? They are father, mother, husband, wife or wives as the case would be, daughters. And with the daughters, there is the main person that is not mentioned there, and that is the son. Sons are also will never what? Be excluded. So ironically, the son is not mentioned in the Quran as a primary heir, and he always inherits. He will have to inherit as a residuary, the one who will receive the rest of the wealth. So son is as a residuary, and he always gets his share as a residuary. In other words, he keeps the rest, and he's called the one who receives that particular amount as the residuary. Ashabul Faraid. Alright, amongst the last portion of them, he's the one, the main asaba. Okay? So there is a hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that gives the description of this, which we'll come back to, that tells us how much they have to receive. But so far we understand, this 5 must get. And what are the 5 again? Father, mother, husband, wife, daughter, and included there is the son. They must get something. Alright? Now the other group are the nuqsan, those who are the weaker line of the link, who could get left out because of the other group in front. These 5. And they are partially exclusion, means that their shares are lessened but not totally removed. Example, a husband's share is what? Half if there is no children. However, if this share is reduced to a quarter if the deceased wife has children. So if she has children, or he had children, one day share from a half, it goes straight to what? A quarter. Alright? But that is provision that there is children. So, you understand what happens to him? He getting something, but he's not getting the full amount again. Now, 5 primary is that can be partially excluded are, so one is partial exclusion by means of reducing in share, but he's on 5 primary shares that can be partially excluded are what? Husband originally gets a half, can be reduced to a quarter if wife has children. 2, next one, widow originally gets a quarter, can be reduced to 1/8 if the husband has children, that's the wife. Alright? The mother of this son originally gets a third, but reduced to 1/6 if the deceased had children or brothers and sisters. So it drops automatically based on the circumstance. Son's daughter originally gets what? The son's daughter, the man has children, he has sons and daughters. So the son's daughter originally gets 2/3 but reduced to what? 1/6 if the deceased has a daughter of his own. Alright? Now, half sister on father's side. Half sister on the father's side originally get 2/3, depending on the case, reduced to 1/6 if the deceased has full sisters. So she also what? Her share is also what? Cut down. Now, so far we understand the basic principle of the group of 12 people and who are the 5 that will always receive. Now, falling back in line with what the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us in hadith, in relationship to the proportion now, some of the guidelines that must be applied when we are signing shares. We're going to do this to understand before we actually present a will, maybe in the next couple of classes inshallah, but before presenting the will, what we're going to present now is a direct formula of the different positions of each group of people in the presence of other people. So we know who will get and who will be excluded. For example, in this, when considering or application of a will, how to put a will together, and you have, so in other words, a person come to you and say, look, my father died and he left me, his son, he left 4 sisters with me, he left my mother, he left 2 of his brothers alive, alright, 1 of his sister alive. So he just telling everybody, right, these are people who are alive, what to do with his wealth. Right, what to do with his wealth, and he said the distributor according to Islamic law. Now, where do we start? Where do we go? We know this, but where do we do? So this is what we have to look into now. How are we going to take that information and know who will get and who will not get? Because they don't know, they tell you, you figure it out. Who will get and who will not get. So we are going to try to figure out in our case now who is going to get and who will not get. For example, this chart is going to help us do that. For example, never excluded and father, mother, daughter, son, wife, and husband. These are people who never excluded whatsoever. And always excluded are heirs who are absolutely excluded in the presence of certain heirs. In other words, they are a group of people, when somebody is there, living, the other person get what? Knocked off. And let's look at it. For example, excluded is a grandfather. He will become excluded. He won't be added to the will because of the presence of who? Excluded in the presence of who? The father. So if the father is alive, all right, and the grandfather is also alive, who is going to get the money instead? The wealth. The father. The grandfather gets knocked off because of the presence of the father. A brother, all right, of the deceased, if his father is alive, a brother of the deceased gets knocked off in the presence of the father. You understand what's happening there? So, if the civil had two brothers, my father alive, my mother died, who get knocked off right there? Well, automatically, we know a brother knocks off once the father is there. Finish. Grandmother, maternal and paternal, whether from your mother's side or your father's side. Once the mother is alive, both grandmother gone. They get anything. Nothing they will receive. Alright? Grandmother, paternal side. The father side. In other words, if the grandmother from the father side is there, of this person who died, once the father is there, that paternal grandmother on the father side, she gone too. She again nothing. Alright? A real sister. His real sister is alive. He died. But in the presence of who? She will come knocked off. By the son, the grandson, and the father. That sister what? Totally get knocked off. You understand? So you tell me you have a what? Your sister alive. But you tell me what? You have a son too. You tell me you have what? A grandson and you have a father alive. So one day sister one time. Once that exists, sister gets nothing. Because the son now becomes more entitled. If the grandson was not in place of that son, same thing happened. The father was in place of the son and the grandson, same thing happened to that sister. Knocked out totally. Alright? A consanguine sister is that sister by a relationship. For example, you know when you have cousin relationship, a cousin married a cousin, first cousin kind of relationship, married husband, wife relationship, blood relationship, marriages like that. A first cousin married an ex-cousin, a cousin married an ex-cousin, that kind of thing. That is a consanguine relationship. Alright? In that kind of relationship, when you have family married in family, that's what we call it. Alright? And yes, it's permissible for a cousin to marry an ex-cousin and that kind of thing. It's permissible. So, in that relationship, this sister, in that relationship, will be knocked out by a son, a grandson, a father, the real brother, and also by real sisters if she inherits as a residuary. She totally gets knocked out one time if she becomes the last person there. Alright? Now, this is the law concerning that. Also, you throw in brothers and sisters, means our personal relationship. Brothers and sisters in a relationship. Once the son of this individual is alive, the father is alive, and the real brother is alive, also excluded by daughter and granddaughter. Alright? These will knock out those brothers and sisters from a relationship one time. No inheritance there. So sharers who are excluded as sharers but inherit as residuary, mean these people who see the remaining bulk of the wealth. The granddaughter by two, and will become excluded by two or more daughters. So you have a granddaughter, but she has who? In the place of them, her mother or someone is alive. That is it. They will inherit, she will not inherit because the mother or her mother will have what? More rights. That is the mother of those children, right? Now the real sister, by one or more daughters or son, the son's daughter, that sister comes knocked off. Even though she's there. And you notice that they will come off the relationship very quickly from getting wealth. And the consanguine sister, by one or more daughter or granddaughters, or by two or more real sisters. And that's a difference here in a relationship. Alright? So in this whole list here, in the first chart, if somebody bring a case for you, you know how to what? Tell you who is going to receive. If you have father, grandfather, mother, brother, son, and they bring everybody in a list for you, you could tell who's staying to receive and who what? Not going to receive because of the presence of one. So if you know who is present, and amongst them who will get knocked off because of the presence of that individual. Alright? So that's basically what you have to do. So in the 2/3 portion of the wealth, there's a group of people we call the people who must receive, and we say that like the father, mother, wife, husband, son, daughter. All right? These are the group that we say that they must receive some portion. And apart from them, then we go on to the other group of people. But we say according to the brothers and sisters and the sisters and so on the other side, blood relationship, they can be knocked off depending on the presence of who is there. And that's how we learn that chart. All right? We should go through that chart to determine that. Now, let us look at a different aspect of now. The shares. How much, who gets in that relationship. So once you identify who have to receive, now you have to know how much they have to receive. All right? One is to identify. The first thing is to know who must receive. And the next group is to find out how much that individual have to receive. And that is important in calculations, because you can't say, well, these have to receive and we give an equal share. No, Allah tells us what is the portion of that share that they must get. All right? For example, sharers are reduced by the existence of other sharers, which we did above. All right? Now, the portions that they have to get. So the heirs, the sharers, the real amount, the reduced amount, and the condition that must exist. So this is basically in a chart to make it easy for us to understand who receiving and how much you're receiving, right? And the condition that must exist for you to receive. For example, a husband. According to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, right? This individual must get a half and or reduced to a quarter. When what? The condition applies with a child or son's child. So first you're really getting what? A half. But he will be reduced to a quarter if who exists? The child of that individual or the son's child. Alright? And that's the relationship there. The next one, a wife. A wife is entitled to what? A quarter. But she could be reduced to 8 with a child or a son's child. That's the relationship that they have. Once you have a child in a relationship, that's it, they finish. So it reduces. A mother now, what is her share? A mother gets a third of the total wealth. That's a fixed share for her. But she can be reduced to what? 1/6 with a child or a son's child, or 2 or more brothers and sisters with father and living spouse. So she goes to what? 1/6. So from that 1/6, a third of the residue, right? And then she gets, or if there's none of them, then she gets a third of the residue. Means if there's no what? Children in the relationship, she get what? A third. Alright? Now, that's husband, wife, and a mother. Cover 3 of them. A granddaughter could get, one of them could get what? A half. If only one granddaughter you have, she get a half. If you have more than that, than one, 2 or more, all of them will get what? Only 2/3, and will only get 1/6 if there's only what? One daughter. The condition is only what? One daughter. But they could get bumped off very easy, isn't that so? In the presence of who? Son. A real son. A consanguine sister gets a half, or 2 or more of them will get 2/3 or 1/6 with a real sister. Reduced because of the real sister. We talked about that relationship already. Right? Now, this is just telling you the portion or the proportion that one will receive in terms of wealth in fixed shares. Now, continuing that same effort to learn more about the shares, let's look at the cases now. A sharer who always inherits and never excluded, and the condition for it. Alright? For example, son is a primary heir if alone he takes the whole residue. A son living, he takes everything. All of what remains. In other words, after the father, let's say the father died, right? The mother gets her what? Her share of 1/6, as the case would be here. All right? because of the presence of probably a daughter or something like that, or a son. Now, so the daughter gets a share, the mother gets 1/6. The remaining of that will go to the son. So you have a 2/3 portion of wealth. And you want to say a lot, we have 1/6, 2/3, and we have a portion of wealth. How do we make this proportion of wealth? It goes in accordance to a law that we normally use. And this is how the Arabs were the ones who with algebra and LCM and fractions and so on were the top in the world with it at the very beginning. Why? Because the lowest common multiple or factor that we will see is what they would use. So if you have $10 to give, and you have to give a person a fixed share of 2/3, and you have to give one a share of 1/6, and so on, then you have to find the lowest common multiple, and then whatever remains on those two shares, that remaining portion now goes to the son in terms of sharing. All right? But in all of it, we say firstly, dealing with the son. If he is existent, we say that the son, he is the primary heir, the one who is going to receive as the main person. If he alone is there, he takes all of the residue after the mother gets her fixed share and the sister gets her share, then it goes to the son. That is what's going to take place. All right? 2 or more sons equally divide the residue amongst themselves. So whatever remains after they give to the fixed share to the mother and the sister and so on, which will get one part of it, 2 to 1 as you will show there. All right? Or whatever, whoever is living there again with them, whether it is the father's, all right, is there, whoever it may be from that, the mother relationship, that son becomes the primary one to receive the remaining wealth. The residue, he's the one who receives all the residue after that. So the son, 1 or more, divides the residue with daughters in a ratio of 2 to 1. So whatever remain, a man has, as I say, he has husband, wife, 2 sons and a daughter. Let's do the example again now. Husband, wife, 2 sons and a daughter. He might have a father and a mother living as well. All right, so the father dies. He leaves his what? Father, mother. He leaves his wife, and he leaves 2 sons and a daughter. You understand it? In that relationship, who becomes the residuary? The ones who receive the bulk of the wealth? The sons and the daughter. The mother, or the wife as the case would be, of these children, will get a share. And her share is only what? 1/6. Alright? Because of the presence of the children. It would have been how much? If they had no children? 1/3. Alright? But because of the children, it becomes 1/6. So that share is fixed there, and if they are a father or mother, they also entitled to a portion, they get their share. Now add up all those shares, you give them their portion, and the remaining now remains for the sons and daughters to share, which will be that they get in a ratio of 2 to 1. And if they get in a ratio of 2 to 1, it means that you have how many sons? 2 sons, 1 daughter. So 2 to 1 will be how many shares in all? Really? 5 shares. Because each son gets in 2. So 2 plus 2 is 4, plus a daughter which is only receiving 1 share, 5 shares. Alright? So they have to get 5 shares inclusive, and you have to understand that now. So it's 5 shares we need to have amongst all the other remaining persons of the shares. So you have to know that 5 shares are entitled to them already, apart from who has to receive. And that's where the complication now comes with using the lowest common multiple in finding out who will receive. And maybe you'll find this difficult, but this was the simplest things that were brought about to make life easy for many people in different types of mathematical problems in the world today. All right? And this was one of the things that Allah SWT has shown to us to make the distribution of wealth very simple and easy as well. Once you're alive, you're entitled to give whoever you want, any proportion you want. But just remember, when you're giving, you know what you're doing it for. The intention should be for a particular, the purpose should be clear. In other words, you can't say, well, I don't want to leave my children with nothing because they're too what? Wicked. They don't take care of me. So I just want to give away everything. And when I die, I have somebody hired to take care of my funeral rites and everything. And when I die, that's the finish. And when it comes to inheritance now, they get what? Nothing. That case, is a different thing altogether, a different kettle of fish altogether, because you're actually what? doing something out of spiteful revenge against your own children and your family. Say them desert me and they never like me so much, and you do that to them, finish with them. But what the day of Qiyamah, Judgment Day? You might not like them, but that was your wife, that was your children, and this is what you do to them. Alright? There's a different story with that. Okay? But on the other hand, let's say for example, you have children and you have relationship, your sister may be real, suffering in life, she does nothing much in life, sick. You want to help her because you know when you die, perchance you die and you leave these children behind, she will not get nothing from your will and your inheritance whatsoever. Right? You know this, of course, because of the law of the system, how they would knock out, who would knock off. So you want to give her something and help out, and this will be a charity and a good for you. So you give her something to help her and let her, live comfortable or remove her of her burdens and difficulties. You can do that. You're entitled to do that. And that will be a benefit and a reward. You're not doing it because of what? Spiting your what? Family. You're doing it for the pleasure of Allah, to help your brothers, your sisters, your mother, your father, your distant relative who cannot receive our wealth. You could give them whilst you're alive. But once you die, everything what? Locks down and goes straight to what Quran and Sunnah says. So if you never prepare a will and distribute that one to the wealth, you can't say, well, my father used to say so, that he'll give this person that amount and he'll give that person that amount. What your father said, if it wasn't on a will not be counted. That can't work so again. No say. The law is that Allah says, everything now comes what? One pool of wealth, and goes according to Quran and Sunnah. Finish. And that's the law, what is mentioned here. So when we understand this here now, we understand what is the position of a son. And that tells us a lot, When a son is given the position of receiving so much of wealth and has so much autonomy in receiving wealth, he has a bigger responsibility above the daughters in taking care of the parents. Why? Because the bulk of wealth as a residuary goes to the son. That's why now a daughter gets married and goes off with her husband, right? She needs not to come and look after her parents if there's a brother alive. She has to get permission from her husband to do that. Right? Permission from her husband to do that. Because she has a responsibility to whom? Her husband now. I mean, considerate, heart, nice, kind-hearted husband to say, yes, it's your parents, just like my parents, and I must give you consideration to go and look after your parents like my parents. But really and truly, at the end of the day, whose responsibility it is? Allah is showing that that son has a direct responsibility. More than anything else. Because he has to spend money now to take care of them. Not the sister, not anyone else. Or anything has to be done, he has that one, as that person entitled to it. In other words, my father, he live in here, he have land, he have a house, but here working nowhere, he have no money. Not earning an income, he can't buy food, he can't eat the trees, he can't eat the dirt, he can't eat the walls in the house. But you are the son. What are you going to do? You are the son, what would you do? It has nothing to do with, well, wait till he die and then I'll take the money or do something like that. And I'll measure how much money I spend on you and I'll take back that first and then I'll take residual wealth. No. Amanat and responsibility now comes what? To spend. And if you're the only one, in other words, I have 5 brothers, but I'm the only one dishing out money. You see when my father dead, he dies, all you get nothing because it's my money spending here. It doesn't work so. Don't think when you spend your money, you're really what? Deducting from your father's wealth in his land and his house. And it can't work so. You can't minus as you spend. Because it doesn't work like that. Even if you are alone spending money and the rest of them not doing anything. The amanat and responsibility is to take care of your parents with your wealth. You are getting double the share no matter what. Even if they don't want to get and they still get double. Forget that. Allah is going to account for that. But the responsibility becomes what? That of the son first to spend on his parents. When he dies, the wealth, you divide the property, you sell it, you can do whatever you want with it and distribute it 2 to 1. But the end of the day, it is telling us in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts that great amanat and responsibility upon a son to ensure that they are taken care of, not in a deduction format. Alright? All of them, but they can discuss who will take personal responsibility on a daily basis or for whatever period of time, or if one person appointed responsibility and they could either disperse wealth to him to help take care of them, or they do whatever they have to do, but they must have an agreement. They just can't say, well, or even, we have the mentality that, well, the last son will take care of we and look after we affairs, and the big one just gone, and, that is the end of the story. Not so in Islam. All sons have that responsibility towards their parents. All right? And that is the main core responsibility. All right? Now, what about the daughter? The daughter always inherits. Allah will always favor the woman in this deen. All right? She's not mandatory and not accountable to look after the parents on the day of Qiyamah. The sons will be held accountable. The sons. Because she could say, my husband say, I can't go. But she husband account now. She case closed. But the son can never do that. He has to give an account. And therefore the daughter comes out even better, because she don't have to take that money and not with it. She can do whatever she wants with it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses the woman in this deen even more. But they may not get, it may look like disproportionate, 2 to 1. But look at the difference. The amanat is not upon her. The amanat and responsibility is upon the son. Right? That is the bigger understanding of what is happening here. So while she gets, the daughter always inherits, never excluded. She gets a half. A single without sons. If there's no son, she gets a half of the wealth, just like that. 2/3, more than 2. If there's more than 2 sisters, all right, without sons, they will get 2/3 of the wealth. All the sisters share, the daughters share 2/3 of the wealth. All the daughters put together. If you have 4 daughters, 5 daughters, you put them together, 2/3 will be for them. That's all they're going to get. They're going to share that 2/3, however. All right? Now the residue with son, male, female, the ratio is what? Male 2, daughter 1, in that ratio. All right? They could inherit like this. That's how the daughter is fitted into the distribution of fractions in receiving wealth. And that is, if she is alone by herself without anybody of the other categories, she gets half of the wealth one time. And if she has sisters with she and no brothers, all the sisters getting how much? 2/3. And if by chance she has what? Brothers with her, she's still receiving a share, as opposed to the brothers getting 2 shares. So 2 to 1 is the ratio. And that is how they benefit totally without any what? Account for them. The grandsons excluded by a living son. And we know that's a straightforward case. All right? And a grandson is a primary heir in the absence of a living son. If the son not there, therefore the grandson takes the place of the son, ascendant, descendant. All right? If alone, he takes the whole residue, the grandson. Meaning what remains after the father or the mother or the sister or whoever it is existing there, the daughters, whoever it may be. But he gets the remaining set. All right, the grandson. The residue. 2 or more grandsons equally divide the residue among themselves. If they have what? Whatever remains behind after giving the necessary people who have to receive. All right? A grandson divides the residue with the granddaughters in the ratio of 2 to 1, just like that, male, female. If they exist together, grandson, granddaughter. All right? All right. Inshallah, just finish the last one here, we close off. Excluded, in the presence of a son, a grandson is not excluded by a daughter. He takes the residue if grandson converts a granddaughter into a residuary. In other words, if there's grandson, granddaughter, they become the one who receive at the end. But the daughter does not get that position of becoming the final residue. The son, the grandson becomes final residue. Because of that paternal relationship. There. The grandson of that. So the son died, grandson there. Yeah. Grandson takes the position of the son. Alright, so we stop there, inshallah. Let's make dua. Allahumma ameen. اللهم انت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والاكرام سمعنا واطعنا غفرانك ربنا واليك المصير اللهم ربنا يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير بك نستعين يا فتاح وسبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.